Good morning, everyone. Hello, welcome to Talent Views Webinar Wednesdays. Thank you for joining us today. We're seeing that everyone's coming in to the webinar. I want to say hi to everyone that's joined us today. Thank you for being here. Quick shout outs before we start. Wanted to say hi to Tam and Teresa of Central Retail Vietnam. I've heard so many great things about you from Sheila. So welcome. Thanks for joining us. Hello to Tone from Hafel, Vietnam. Thank you for being here. And also to Irina of JA Experts JSC. Thank you everyone for joining us. And I'm gonna quickly jump in already and start this webinar. All right. So just quick reminders for your Zoom tabs, letting you know that if you want to make your screen bigger, you can do so by clicking on the upper right side of your screen if you feel that you want to make your screen bigger. If you have any question, please feel free to also send that to us via the Q&A button below on the center set of buttons. You can raise your hand. I'm gonna ask for some audience participation later on. You can raise your hand. And don't worry, everything that I'm showing today, we will share to you. We will share all the slides to you. So anything that you see for this webinar, you will get full access, complete access to the entire webinar. All right? So webinar recording will also be sent to you 24 hours after this session together with the presentation slides. Okay, so I just wanted to quickly introduce TalentView first. And if this is your first time hearing about TalentView, I wanted to share that we're all about three things: employer brand strategy, design, and technology. So if you need help with creating your employer brand strategy or making things better when it comes to your recruitment or your management program, reaching your target talents, we're here to help you. And we've partnered with the best technologies globally. So you see some logos here, and we're happy to meet with you and get on a call with you to share more details. But for today, of course, our topic is a leadership and management training program, how to strengthen and identify your leaders and your top talent. So we're gonna focus and jump to that after a few introduction slides. So let me introduce myself again. My name is Ange Vera. I am the CEO of TalentView, and I've been in HR for about 15 years now. I've graduated as well from Employer Branding College Australia with honor distinction in employer branding. And I wrote a book specifically for talent acquisition entitled Rethink Recruitment. We've worked with many companies across the region, and these are just some of the clients we work with. So you see a mix of local companies and also companies that are multinational or global. So we're happy to sit down with you, learn a bit more, and then help you out in case you need help with any of the programs that you're running in HR. All right? So in terms of our agenda, how to identify leadership potential is something that we're going to cover today in the next 50 to 60 minutes. We're going to share with you also how to measure leadership effectiveness and what leadership competencies are emerging as critical. So we'll talk about this as we go through the entire topic for today, which is finding leaders within, how to identify top talents and grow your company during a pandemic. Okay, so let's do a quick poll. Let's get the ball rolling, get the conversation going. A poll will pop up on your screen. Wanted to hear from you. What is your role in your company? Are you in talent acquisition, general HR, training and development, or maybe in a functional role? Just feel free to click the choice, and we will see where everyone is at for today's session. All right, so I'll give everyone a few minutes. In case you're having coffee, water, feel free to just be informal today. Join us for this webinar. All right, let's get the results. Okay, so wow, we've got 9% of people in talent acquisition, 55% in HR, 18% in training and development, and you've got others, 18% also probably in specific functions or in other broader roles. So welcome again, and you are in the right webinar. This is absolutely a pressing topic. How do you find leaders within your company? All right, so let's jump into it. I have one more poll for more specific questions. Again, we'll get the audience participation here. Quick question to you. Do you have a management training or leadership program in your company? So there's three choices that are coming up. The first is yes, we have a leadership program, very established, very solid. Second option is yes, we have it, but we can develop it further. And the third option is no, we do not have a program yet. All right, so please feel free to check all that apply. Okay. So let's take a look at our responses there. Okay, so there's 11% that have a leadership program. So 67% who are joining us today are saying that yes, it's there, but we need to develop it further. All right, so really great to see that despite everything, despite what we're experiencing now, which is what we call the now normal, everyone is still wanting to grow, wanting to develop. Okay, so I want to share this quote with you. This is by John Maxwell, a leadership author and guru. He said, "A leader who produces other leaders multiplies their influences." And I believe this is absolutely true. The more leaders you have in your organization, the faster it is you can achieve your goals and get everyone to buy into the direction of the company. And it's so important for us to identify leaders and then grow them and put them in roles that will allow them to influence others. So when we talk about identifying leadership potential, there are a few non-negotiables, things that are critical as you lay down your program. Okay, oops, there. So 3 A's first that I want to share. And when you look at your company and when you look at your role, questions that are good to ask. The first is, what does the company need? Are you expanding to 5 branches? Are you expanding to maybe 10 other territories? Are you trying to grow to 500 people? What does the company need? Is a basic question, but a very important one before launching your leadership program. The next is, what am I great at? So you can ask yourself this question, but you can also ask your talents to answer this, find their strengths, find the things that they're good at. And then, what do I love doing? What energizes me? And the last, or second to the last, is, what do I want to become in my company? This is not just for you, but really for the talents you have in the organization. Where do they want to go? Do they want to go into a supervisor role, a managerial role? And then the last question is, what is important to learn or get better at to achieve my goal? So you notice there's a connection between what the company needs and what you should be developing. So at the heart of, I would say, any leadership program, any management training program, you have all these angles checked. You have the part of the company, what they need, and you have the part of the individual or the talent. And then connecting that together, you'll be able to achieve your entire objective or your entire goal. All right. And when we talk of leadership pipelines in TalentView, we actually have a leadership pipeline builder process that we follow. And there are 6 steps to that. So if you notice, it's also color coded. So those in blue, number 1 and 2, are connected to align. Those number 3 and 4 are connected to assess. And numbers 5 and 6 are connected to the accelerate portion. All right. So I will go through this one by one, but just as a summary for you to see the flow, of course, the most important, as we talked about earlier, is goal setting. I wanted to see a quick raise of hands. You'll see a button below. You'll see a button in your Zoom tab. How many people here have already understood the goals of the company? Who knows the goal of their company? What is the business plan of the company going forward? Just click on your raise hand so that we can see who are understanding the goals of their organization. All right. Okay, nice. So I'm seeing some people raising their hands. That's good to know. For the others that aren't raising their hands, that's also okay. It means that you have to start with that point, or you have to start with that place. All right, so that's the first. If you know the goal, it is easier for you to create your management training program or your leadership program. The next step is to now communicate that. You have to talk to the talents, tell them that they're part of the program. You have to talk to leaders to tell them that you are launching this kind of program. How will it help them achieve their goals, and what the direction of the program will take? All right, so that's the aligning part. And once you solve that, you can now move on to the assessment part, which is trying to understand both the strengths and the weaknesses of your team. So you'll have to do step 3, which is our strengths and gaps assessment. So identifying the strengths and areas for development of your talent pipeline. The next is interviewing them. Sometimes, I don't know if this has happened to you, but in my experience, there are some people, they are happy where they are. Even if they are skilled, even if they have a lot of capabilities, they don't want to move. They are happy in their current role. So you want to interview them. You want to talk to them and make sure that the people you're trying to grow and develop are people who actually want to get the development plan of the company. That is super important, right? And then once you complete that assessment phase, you now move on to accelerate, to now plan for their promotion, plan for their movement in the company. And it's important for you to map that journey, understand what are the training programs they have to take, what are the learning sessions that they have to sit down on and join with their manager for them to learn the key concepts for particular skills. And the last is check-in and reflection. So you don't want a training program where you throw them in the classroom and then you see them after 1 year. You definitely want to have some checkpoints and see how they are doing. Are they liking the learning? Are they developing? Do they feel that they're growing in their new roles? So essentially, these are the 6 steps to building your leadership pipeline. And if you are able to factor this into your program, that will help you a lot when communicating to your talents and also communicating to the business, because they know that you're following a framework and there's a structure to your approach. All right, let's start with some reflection questions here for goal setting. And these are a lot of the questions that are being shown here. We typically ask of every company when they are starting to work on their leadership pipeline. And the first is, what are your organization's financial, customer, process, and learning targets? So it's super important that you just don't look at the financials, don't just look at the sales target, but look at it holistically in a balanced scorecard way. How do you want to serve your customers? What kind of processes do you need to improve? And what are your learning targets as well, right? And then second, and I noticed that there's a lot of people in our webinar that are in training. What are your talent development initiatives? What are you doing now that you think is successful and you want to continue to do? And how are you running and monitoring them? Is this a manual process? Do you actually have to get people to sign on a form? Or is this virtual? Is this digital? And then the third piece is SMART, using SMART. It's a well-established tool that you can use to plan and achieve your goals. And here's an example of SMART. So when I say SMART, it stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. So let's take a look at this, right? So when you talk of the specifics, who, what, why, where, and when, what are the goals of the company that you want to align to, and how are you measuring those goals? Which brings me to the second point, which is measurable, right? Not just by sales, but maybe take a look at this. If your specific goal is customer satisfaction, maybe you roll out a survey to your customers and your goal is to get 4 out of 5 stars before you can say that you've actually met your goal. And then the next question is it attainable? Can you reach it within a 6-month period? Can you reach it within a 1-year period? It's very important. And from there, you'll need to be able to see what skills are needed for you to meet your goal or to reach your goal. And then you have realistic. So again, understanding your resources, making sure that you can really achieve them within the given time, which is the time bound. All right. So quick show of hands. Just wanted to check with everyone who here is using the SMART model. Is there anyone using the SMART model for understanding their goal setting activities? All right. Okay, so there are a few. Good to know. So this is a very well accepted model, and if this is something that you're using, that's great, because then you can really connect with the C-suite of your organization. But if not, it's never too late. You can start today. And again, we're sharing all these slides to you so that you can take back a lot of action items after this session. All right. So let's talk about communication planning. So it's not only important to meet the goal or understand the goal, but you have to communicate it to the team. Because if they don't know that they're part of your management training program, then they also won't really step up and try to prove themselves. So you want people to be aware of the program that you're running, and then you want them to step up to the challenge and rise to that challenge, right? So just some guide questions here. How are you communicating changes in your learning and development? Do people even know that you have training programs, learning programs? Will classroom trainings be fully replaced by e-learning now that we're in a virtual setup and there's limited movement, limited going out? How's that going to affect you? How's that going to affect the rollout of your training programs? Will there be adjustments to your KPIs or your targets? Very important to note. And of course, be transparent. As I said earlier, transparency with business goals and how each talent plays a part will create realistic expectations. A lot of times what we see also is that some people, when they go through a training program, they expect to be promoted right after. But as you know, that's not always the case. Promotion can be after 6 months, after 12 months, or maybe even when the boss leaves. That's the only time you can get promoted. So you have to be very realistic about communicating the development plan and the growth plan, both to the leaders and to the target talents, right? And here's a statistic from McKinsey. 91% of employees say that they are more effective if they can see how their individual goals fit into the big picture. I 100% agree with this and wanted to share it with you that if you're able to communicate the learning, communicate the contribution, you're going to also be more effective in your own roles because of it. All right? So let's take a look at the assessment piece. Here are some of the guide questions in the assessment piece. The very first one is check if you have the following. Do you have an updated list of KPIs? KPI stands for key performance indicators. Do you know when a person will be successful in the role? What do they need to do? Do they need to close sales? Do they need to increase customer satisfaction? Do they need to have cost savings? What are the goals of each individual? The second thing you need to check, competency framework with definitions and rubrics. So rubrics are another term for this, is behaviorally anchored rating scales. So when you say behaviorally anchored rating scales, what are the behaviors that you expect from them? What are the things that you'd like to see on the job? Second would be assess your team's capability to continue business operations using these metrics. So let me take a pause. If they have KPIs, if they have goals, and if they are able to understand how they connect to the business, will your team's business operations be successful also? The answer should be yes, because that's the ultimate test if they are aligned or not. If the individual goals are aligned to the target goals of the company. So if your answer is yes there, then that's very good. If your answer is no, you'll have to go back to step 1 and step 2. All right. And then the third, use competency-based assessments to objectively identify areas of strength and development for their talents. All right. So how are you identifying strengths? Are you simply looking at them and seeing, oh, they're doing good? Or you look at them and you say, they're not doing so well. Are there tools that you are using to identify what they're good at and to identify what they need development on, what their capability is? So it's so important to use tools so that you have a third-party measure. Because if it's just you, then sometimes it can be seen also as very biased, or it can be seen as a subjective way of understanding or tracking strengths or development areas. So you want to definitely bring in a fresh perspective when assessing your talents. All right. So just wanted to share some of the work we do with customers when it comes to reporting, when it comes to assessment. So one of the partners that you saw earlier, our tool called Talligent. So this is a webinar exclusive to a Vietnamese audience. So if you notice, all the tools that we're sharing here have also been translated. So the tests are coming out in Vietnamese, and that just allows us to assess at every level, whether that's rank and file, supervisor, managerial, all the way to leadership. We can definitely assess in many different areas. And this is an example of trying to tap into leadership growth potential. So one of the reports that we have in our library is understanding if somebody has leadership potential or not. So take a look here on the middle, I would say, image. You have 6 areas that we're looking at. The first is self-management. Can they lead themselves? The most important aspect of putting someone in a leadership role is first leading themselves. Second is, do they have a growth mindset? Do they want to learn more? Do they want to grow within the company? Do they want to grow their skills? The third is inner drive. You want people that really are pushing to give their best and are achieving at the highest levels. Next is social intelligence, or trying to see how they work well with others. Because when you're in a leadership role, you work with a lot of people. So social intelligence, absolutely critical to becoming a leader. Novel problem solving, so being able to respond quickly when problems arise. And of course, the last, desire to lead. They have to want to be a leader. So you notice in this third image, we have an interpretation of the scores. And on this second image, we have a summary of that, showing what the overall leadership potential of the individual is. So you get to see there, green would be your areas of strength and yellow would be average. So you get to see some scores there. Or sorry, yellow would mean areas for development. So for this sample report, you've got three competencies where this person is capable and 3 competencies where they need to develop. And then when you move to the latter sections of the report, we also have interview questions. So remember, we talked about accelerating the growth, being able to interview them, being able to understand their perspective, the perspective of the talent. So you've got interview questions already to guide you how to check for that, how to assess for that. And you have it already across each and every competency, from self-management, growth mindset, all the way to the desire to lead. All right? Part of that report also is development tips. So if you're, I'd say, at a loss trying to figure out how do I develop a person's growth mindset, there are already tips within the report that we're sharing with you that will allow them to measure, that will allow you to assess the growth mindset of an individual. All right. So I wanted to share with you research as well. When we look at the market, what are the leadership competencies emerging as critical? Okay. There are 6, and studies have shown that number 1 is learning agility. Learning agility means having a passion for learning, being open to new things, to innovation, developing people, and communicating a vision. So learning agility is really all about how quickly you can adjust to the world today. So if you look at the competencies that are coming out here, it's not really hard skills alone, but also what we call soft skills, but I really don't want to call it soft skills because for me, these are critical to becoming a great leader. So I would even put them together with the hard skills category and say that they're equally important, if not more important. So the next one is contextual intelligence, or trying to see many perspectives. When you're developing leaders, you don't want somebody who's just going to say, this is my way or the highway, right? We want people that will be open to listening to others, be open to learning from others, and getting all these perspectives together before coming up with a decision. That's the second. The third is technological intelligence. So being very quick to amplify the power of technology, to understand technology and use it to their advantage. So gone are the days when everything is on email. People are now using their mobile phones. People are using so many applications, and it's just critical that whoever you put in a leadership role understands also the role of technology in being able to multiply their influences and becoming a great leader. The fourth is grit. So in life, there will always be mountains to climb. There will always be challenges. So you need leaders who can bounce right back up and who will say, okay, even if I stumbled, I'm gonna try again, and I'm gonna try something different. And we really are looking at grit for our leaders to display and to show, right? The fifth is social and cultural IQ. So this one is very big. The world is condensing. You see all these, I would say, connections happening. You see cultures coming into play. When you're working with teams, it's condensing into something really small. It's a small world where you have people from different nationalities, different parts of the world coming together, working on projects. So you want people that have that emotional sensitivity and to be able to embrace different cultures and different social backgrounds when working with others. So that's something that's driving leadership now and the assessment towards great leadership. And the last piece is transformative. We want leaders who have this ability to create and drive a meaningful roadmap that will motivate people to take action and align their efforts. So it's not just important to know the plan, but to be able to communicate that plan and to get buy-in. I would say that this is so important because if people don't buy into the vision, it's going to be very hard to get them to motivate them and to do what needs to be done for the company. So these are the 6 that are coming up in our research as very critical to driving smart leadership in your own organizations. All right. So how do we measure leadership effectiveness? I wanted to share with you another framework. But before that, before I explain this, I wanted to see some raise of hands and get participation here. Check how everyone is doing. If you had any questions, feel free to put it in the Q&A. So just a quick show of hands. Who is familiar with the 9-box methodology? Who has used it before or who knows about it? So don't worry, we will not shout out to anybody. We just want to get an idea who's using the 9-box methodology and who isn't. So show of hands to anyone who's using the 9-box methodology. All right, nice. So we have a few people that are familiar, and that's great. So let me explain what it is. So for those who are familiar, just bear with me as I explain this. And again, you know, it's just such a great tool. It's a simple tool, but a very effective one to be able to, I would say, bucket the people in your leadership and management training program. Okay, so there's 2 things we look at. We're looking at their potential to be a great leader, and we're looking at their performance. So performance meaning they've been in your company for maybe 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. You want to make sure that you also know where they stand when it comes to performance. All right. So you assess them first on potential. Is this person's potential to be a great leader low, moderate, or high? Okay. So you can put pictures of people, you can put names of people. And the second thing that you need to look at is their KPI or their performance. Is their performance in the company low, moderate, or high? Okay. So for sure, you've got people that are what we call in the red. They have low potential. They will never be, it's hard for you to see them as a leader, and their performance in the company is low. So we put them in the red. And these are people where if you if you've given them the development initiatives, you've helped them, you've coached them, but they're still not showing any change in performance, these are the people that most likely you will have to coach out, right? But then there are also people, potential to lead will be moderate, and their current performance could also be moderate. Or maybe their potential to lead is high, but their performance is low. Or maybe it's both moderate, potential and performance, both moderate. Or there will be people high performance, but maybe low potential. You see that yellow box there. So these are, I would say, people that they're not the best, but they're not also the worst. And there are people here, all your team members don't always have to be 100% star performers. Some are really just solid performers, consistent performers, and that's okay. And we put them in the yellow boxes, right? But there are people where the performance could be average or the performance could be high, and the potential could be moderate or also high. We put them in the green boxes. And typically, when we're working on a management training program where the investment is limited, you cannot give, I would say, high-level training for all, and you'll have to choose. This is how you choose. You put them in the 9 box. And those that fall within the green area, those with maybe high potential, moderate performance, or high potential, high performance, or moderate potential but high performance, these are the people that you want to invest on first. These are the people that you can shortlist for your leadership or management training program. And then if you do have extra resources, you can move on to those in the boxes, on the yellow boxes, right? So the 9-box methodology is a great way to objectively identify who you can put in your leadership training program, who you can focus on, because this is the future of your company. This is the future of the business. And if you're able to show this to the CEO, if you're able to show this to the management team, they will have a better understanding of their talent bench or an understanding of their talent portfolio. So I would recommend highly this 9-box method to map out everything when it comes to identifying your leaders and identifying your talent. All right, clear so far? All right, so just a few things on the checklist also for the other areas within that leadership pipeline builder. We're now going into the interview and feedback. So you need to have some checklists here as well. The first one is identify technologies or technology partners to help you run virtual interviews. So obviously now, everything is not happening live. So you probably have Zoom, you probably have Workplace, so you probably have other tools that allow you to interview talent virtually. That's one. Second is run engagement surveys and provide feedback on the results. So are you checking if people are, I would say, engaged in this entire process that you've built? And summarize the results per group or function, but also consider creating person-centric learning plans or IDPs. So I can see we've got a question. Associate may move from high performance plus moderate potential to high potential and moderate performance. Yes, absolutely. So as they're moving along, then you can include them in your area of focus. So they're probably high performance. Okay, so high performance here, but moderate potential, and then move to high potential, but moderate performance. Yeah, that can happen. That can absolutely happen. And that's why it's important to periodically track. Typically, when you're doing this 9-box, we notice that most companies do this every 6 months or every 12 months because people can move. Their performance can change, their potential can change, right? And depending on where they fall, you can align your programs to where they would be typically in the 9-box role. Thank you very much for that question. All right, so we'll move on to just sharing with you some tools. So as you know, one of our key partners for assessment is Talagen. So if you don't have a tool yet, this is something that we typically use for our customers and for ourselves as well. So we have a video interview module where you can create a question. So this one is a customized question. Tell me about a time when you encountered an irate or difficult customer. How did you manage the situation and what was the outcome? So you can customize the question and the person can answer the question and record themselves on their mobile phone. So it could be in their laptop, it could be in their mobile phone. So you notice here on the right side, someone is taking it for their graduate development program on mobile. And once that's done, so this is not Skype or Zoom. It doesn't have to be live. They will record their answer and you can view it anytime. And once you start to view it, you can just press the play button and you can rate the candidate and say, okay, I think this candidate is a 4-star candidate or this response is 4 stars. And you can put your notes. And the link here you can send to the hiring manager, you can send to the department manager or the business unit head for them to also watch the answer to the question. And you can share your notes in the notes section. So again, mobile, tablet, or desktop, this can be done. And it's just allowed us to be quick with gathering all the answers and responses to our interview and feedback. All right. This is also a sample worksheet we want to share with you. This is something we're using inside TalentView. So sample career aspiration worksheet, we ask them questions like, let's talk about your current role. Are you energized to go to work daily? And then you have options from disagree to agree. And then let's talk about who you work with. How are your peers? What are your short-term career goals, your long-term career goals? And we ask this because we want to know the pulse of our team, the pulse of our people, and understand who wants to grow in their current roles, who wants to move up to a leadership position, how are they working with others. This questionnaire guides our decisions in the management team so that we know that our investments also in our people have a very strong return because these people also want to grow and develop themselves. All right. Okay. And the last piece in our cycle is mapping the journey. So you have to be able to, number one, craft a development plan or what we call an IDP, individual development plan per person, for them to know what programs they need to go through, what exposure they need to go through for them to move up to a different role or for them to grow within the company. What are the areas you want to focus on as you go along with your development journey? Essentially, that's the question. Start the learning and development journey with them following the 3E model of learning, which I will show right after this slide. So 3E model of learning, 70-20-10. And the third is identify possible obstacles in achieving the goals. Is there any roadblock? Is there anything hindering you, stopping you from achieving that goal or that development plan? Okay, so when we talk of 3Es, typically most companies that we encounter for the first time, when we talk of learning, they think it's always about classroom training. But if you look at this, following this model, it actually is not. It's 70% experience on the job, experience on the role. 20% exposure, meaning being able to go with their manager, visit a client, make a presentation to the client, being exposed to the role itself that you want them to move to. And only 10% is education. So these are your 3Es: experience, exposure, and education. And the model says that the ideal percentage or ratio is 70%, 20%, 10%. So only 10% should be classroom. So probably reading books, attending conferences, taking on certification courses or webinars is only 10% of the learning. 90% of the learning happens on the job, happens on the exposure to the new role that you want them to take 2 years from now, 3 years from now, as you identify their leadership potential. All right, I hope that's clear. And again, don't worry, we'll be sending this slide to you so you can use this as a model also when now applying it to your own company. All right, so I'm also sharing with you a sample IDP worksheet. So again, IDP is Individual Development Plan, and it's following this model of understanding the goal, identifying what are the target competencies for you to meet that goal, and then what are the learnings that you need to take for you to successfully deliver on that goal. So again, spread out across the 3E model: experience, exposure, and education. And then measure of success is, how do we know you're successful? How do we know that you met the goal? So for this particular example, overall satisfaction rating from stakeholders. So make sure, here's a pro tip, just look at the left side of your screen, there's a pro tip here. Make sure that the measure of success is easy to track. You have a way of monitoring it, because if you have a hard time tracking the metric, it's also going to be very difficult for the team member or for the talent to showcase and display certain behaviors or certain competencies. So you want to know anytime if you're making progress or not, or you're hitting the mark. So make sure that your metric is easy to track. So if that's overall satisfaction, maybe you roll out a satisfaction survey for your customers that will be connected to the goals of your talents. All right. And then the last piece as well on the accelerate side, check and reflect on progress. So, you know, when you're building a culture of learning, it's not a one-time thing. When you're encouraging growth, one of the things that we always say, even in TalentView, is that development is shared. And what I mean by this, when we say development is shared, is that the company has a responsibility to develop you, send you to programs, to learning sessions, but you as the talent, you as the leader, also have a responsibility to be passionate about learning, to be passionate about wanting to grow your career with the company. So development is shared, development is two-way. And that's how you really build a culture of learning. So we want to instill these conversations, make sure that people are coming together maybe once a month or maybe once a quarter to try and track where everyone is and to reflect what can we do better or what are we doing right. Second is monitor progress and weekly accomplishment through your company's virtual social town halls. So if you have company gatherings or town halls, celebrate the milestones, report on it so that the entire organization can see how that progress is building up. And of course, the last is be ready to make adjustments as you see the improvements happening or as you see things evolving in your own company. All right. So that's your checklist for the final step in the leadership pipeline builder. So the last few things that I wanted to show you, of course, are our case studies. We've worked with a lot of organizations. I wanted to share two with you where we've been very successful building a leadership pipeline and rolling out a management training program. The first is Suntory Pepsi. So their biggest challenge was they wanted to identify in recruitment who would be the best candidates for their management trainee program. When you have a program like this, there is a budget. But of course, that budget is also limited. So you want to make sure you get the cream of the crop. You get the best of the best people to come into your program, because these are the people that will be the future leaders also of the company. So we worked with Suntory PepsiCo to customize the reports. We rolled out video interviews for their candidates. So wherever you are in Vietnam, you can take the assessment. You don't have to go to the office of Suntory PepsiCo or SPVB. You can just go online, click on a link, and take the video interview. So this is a sample question. Introduce yourself. And every fresh grad candidate will just talk for a few minutes, about 2 minutes to introduce themselves. And then SPVB HR can already put stars to that and can put notes. You'll also notice that we have the competencies showing here, and you can rank these competencies within the report. So in a total of 5 days, we were able to assess more than 700 candidates. 40% of these candidates were converted to face-to-face interviews, and we were able to standardize a report for all applicants, making the process absolutely seamless and easy, not only for the candidates, but also for the entire SPVBHR, because they already understood the reports and how to make decisions out of those reports to identify their top talents. The second company we worked with was Grab. So Grab, this is a regional project. We worked with them to measure and assess 100 leaders across the APAC region to identify who had the right competencies for promotion, who had the right competencies for specialized development program. And we mapped that with our reports, a total of 11 competencies mapped. And at the end of everything, we were able to create an IDP worth 6 months for all the managerial development programs that needed to be taken within Grab. So we're extremely proud of these two projects because of just all the hard work on both sides that have been done. And more importantly, the results that it achieved for these two companies. So that's your leadership pipeline builder in a nutshell. Goal setting, communication planning and launch, strengths and gaps assessment, interview and feedback, mapping the journey, and check-in and reflection. All right? And now I wanted to get into a poll as we wrap up this webinar. Which among the following are you good at? Check all the boxes that apply. Which among these 6 steps you think you already have within your company and you're extremely proud to be practicing and doing? All right. So I'll give you a bit of time to reflect on that and drink a bit of water as well. All right. Again, quick reminder, you can put any questions on your Q&A button, or if there's anything you wanted to ask, just let us know. All right, let us get the results of this survey going. Okay, wonderful, wonderful. So nice to see. All right, so we've got 63% saying that goal setting, they're good at it. 38% for communication planning and launch. Only 13% on the assessment. Okay, so I'm gonna put a challenge here for you guys. Assessment is so important. So when you come back to work, take a look at some of the competencies that I've shared, the SMART goals, and just tag within your goals, how do you plan to assess that? How do you plan to assess the competencies that leaders should be having? Because if you cannot measure it, you cannot manage it. So it's very important for you to be able to assess the competencies of your leaders and assess their goals as well, their performance and their potential. But it's so nice to see 75% are really good at interview and feedback, especially all of us are in HR. I think this is a given. Most of us will be really, it's close to our heart. We do interviews a lot. So it's nice to see that you're also applying this and giving feedback to your internal talents. 1/4, 25% are mapping the journey, and 0 of us are not so good at check-in and reflection. So this is something that needs to be improved and something that we can put in our roadmap to make sure that every month we are checking in with our talents and seeing how they are doing with our development program. All right, so I'll move on to the last couple of slides. I can see that we have a question here. For what positions would you recommend we use leadership pipeline builder model? All right, that's a very good question. Typically, we would recommend this for the high impact roles. When I say high impact, these are the roles that if you improve them, they will make a big, big difference to the goals of the company. So I would suggest your management trainees, fresh grads, supervisors, managers, directors, and executives. So those that have really high impact, those that will manage teams, and those that will move on to bigger responsibilities and roles in the company. So that's what the leadership pipeline builder is for. All right, so we'll move on to the next slides. As we close our poll, All right. So do you guys have any other questions? Everything good? All right. So let's go to final notes. I can see we're not sharing, so let me quickly just share my screen again and present this. All right. So just some final notes. I wanted to thank you for joining us for this session. And I'll take a pause here again just to run a quick poll. How did you find this webinar? What are the things that you loved about it? And what are the things that we can improve at TalentView to make this webinar experience better for you? And for all those that answer this poll, we will give you a copy of our 2020 Employer Brand Strengths Report. So we recently released a report showing you what the best employer brands are doing right and how you can apply that to your own organization. So please feel free to just answer this quick feedback survey, this quick poll, and we should be able to wrap this up in a bit. Okay, so I'll give you a few seconds for that. All right, thank you again for your feedback. We take that to heart, and definitely we will improve in the best way we know how. So just a reminder for everyone again, as we wrap up this session, we will be sharing with you the webinar recording for Webinar Wednesdays for this session specifically, as well as all the presentation slides that I shared today. And please continue the conversation with us. If there wasn't any question at the moment, you can reach out to us, follow us on LinkedIn, TalentView Inc., contact us learning@talentview.asia, or use the hashtags and feel free to post a screenshot using the hashtags Webinar Wednesday and hashtag TalentViewLearning. So for those that I haven't connected with also on LinkedIn, this is my QR code. So all you have to do is open your camera and point your camera to my QR code being flashed here, and we will be instantly connected on LinkedIn. So again, thank you so much for joining us. I really enjoyed this session. I'm happy to reconnect with you also on all our social media platforms. And we do hope that we see you in our future Webinar Wednesdays. Thank you, everyone. Ching Tam on.